In a magical world full of mysteries, brave adventurers set off on a quest for the
Dofus. Yeah, this is a video about Dofus. Now, I don't blame you if French is not your mother tongue and you've never heard about this game. It is huge in France, where it comes from, and also has a strong Spanish and Latin American community, but aside of those places, the game is very unknown. It's an MMORPG, but it's in isometric view and the fights are turn-based. I love mechanics because I play Dofus way too much. To cut to the chase, the company that makes the game announced back in April of 2026 that they were hosting new servers in the game for a tournament. It consisted on speedrunning a character to max level with some bonuses, since it usually takes quite a bit of time to do that. The tournament itself would last for 15 hours across the last weekend of May, and there would be a huge cash prize to share among the first 100 players that reached max level. I usually don't bother with game tournaments because I know people are way better than me, but I have proof from past competitions that me and my brother are among the best players in the entire game, so we decided to give it a go. With a clear goal and a month to go, we started practicing routes to find what worked best. We spent about a week optimizing the first levels and finding which classes were the fastest, since you would be able to change your character class on the fly during the tournament. With enough practice, we managed to break into level 100 in the first hour and a half. Even if level 200 would still take a long time to reach after this, it still was a really nice time. Continuing that strategy, I managed to get to level 140 by the 3-hour mark, and then to level 165 by the 4-hour mark, which would be the start of the first timeout of the tournament. Then, while I was polishing the strategy, my brother rushed down the stairs to tell me something I didn't expect.
Tess, I was reading the French forums and there's people getting to level 100 in an hour. They're farming dungeons in 5 seconds.
That was shocking to learn. I thought my strategy was really solid, but clearly wasn't enough. At least, learning that let us change our plans. We started farming those dungeons and learned some of them very well, and after 3 more weeks of practicing, I was able to break into level 180 in the first 4 hours, my brother lagging a bit behind at around level 174. I wasn't sure if we could reach level 200 during the first day of the competition, but I ran some math and figured it would be technically possible to do so if luck was on our side. It wasn't just a matter of practicing in-game, though, as I also spent a month theory crafting and preparing optimized gear in a third-party website. We had a really good pace so far, but time was running out for practicing. I was certain we would land a place at the top 100 at first, but as the price grew over the month and the competition got fierce, I wasn't so sure anymore. Then, the first day of the tournament arrived. The first round would be from 3 PM to 7 PM, but the servers would open an hour earlier for players to prepare. At 2 PM, all the players started powering inside the duty-free zone, and both my brother and I quickly started buying the equipment we would be using throughout this first day. We didn't manage to purchase every single item we planned for before the tournament started, but we got everything we would be using on this first 4-hour round. At exactly 3 PM, players started leaving the duty-free zone ready to put their skills to the test. Me and my brother would go our separate ways at first, killing monsters from the starting town all the way to the first dungeon we would farm, the Quaqua's Nest. In about 15 minutes I was already level 50 and ready to start farming the first room of said dungeon, but my brother ran into problems finding monsters and he joined me for a few fights inside the dungeon until he got to level 50 himself. Clearly, rushing this dungeon was a very popular way to take on this race, as we had to fight with dozens of other people to even start a fight on this cramped map. When I hit level 90 at the 55-minute mark, both of us decided to go to another secluded dungeon to avoid fighting with so many people over enemies. We made our way to the Moon Island very quickly and headed into the Cannibal Village dungeon. Something I hadn't yet mentioned is that there would be certain times at which some zones and dungeons would be marked as anomalies and get a ×3 experience multiplier. We couldn't believe our luck when as soon as we arrived here, it got announced that in just half an hour, this very dungeon would get that experience multiplier. Knowing that we would be here for the next hour, we started fighting cannibals to warm up. By the time the anomaly started at 4:30, I was already level 110. As expected, the dungeon got flooded with people looking to get that sweet experience bonus, but my brother and I were already on some kind of flow state, earning up to 10 million experience points per minute. Intense, but short-lived, the first anomaly bonus ended at 5 PM. We were on a roll, since just in the first 2 hours, I had already managed to get to level 141, and my brother was 135. He had a bug that messed up with his equipment preparation, so at this point he'd been frustrated and fallen a bit behind me. Nonetheless, we headed to the next dungeon we had practiced at, ready for our next 30 minutes of XP grind. Once more, as soon as we reached Dragonary's Trial, the next anomalies got announced, and we really couldn't believe that this dungeon would get the bonus too. We were fighting the good fight, and at some point I checked my position in the ladder and saw that I was the 6th best of my server, but I was barely out of the global top 100. Still, that meant that I had an actual chance to get in. By the time the second anomaly round started at 5:30, I had already reached level 152. Despite it getting increasingly frustrating to grab fights in the sea of people inside the dungeon, the experience gain was so massive that I still reached level 180 by 6 PM, which meant that, right now, I was beating my previous PB with an entire hour to spare. Without wasting a second, we moved to a higher level dungeon in the same zone to farm for the next half an hour until the third and last anomalies of this first round would start. At this point, my brother had fallen behind a good bit, but I didn't want him to give up, so I tried to help him get back on his feet. It was now 6:30, and the last anomaly had opened in the Brewman Tinctorius lab. At this point I was level 184, but despite not having practiced this one and playing very sloppily, I still went into the first time out of the tournament at level 190, which meant that I was only 10 levels away from victory. That's easier said than done, though, as the last 10 levels in this game account for most of the experience needed to get to level 200. For now, I had an hour to clear my mind before the second round of the tournament would start. After quickly having dinner, we jumped back into the duty-free zone at 7:30 to buy the remaining gear we couldn't buy during the first preparation phase. 5th best of my server, and still amongst the top 100, I was ready to win this. We both went back to the Carnotaurus Lair dungeon to keep grinding XP there, since it was the best XP per minute we found during practice outside of anomalies. After 30 minutes, I had leveled to 192, and the first anomaly of this round was about to show its face, so we went to the Ancestral Domain dungeon to take advantage of the XP multiplier. I hadn't practiced this dungeon, and had barely touched the class I was using here, so it led to my worst run of the entire tournament. At some point, I was about to give up and accept defeat, but I was just outside of the top 100 fastest players, so I decided to keep fighting. We went back to the Carnotaurus Lair once more, and by 9:30, I had already gone up from level 196 to halfway through 187. To shake things up, instead of going to one of the dungeon anomalies, we went to the one at Kenya's Moors and farmed small groups of Bliblis. This is a well-known leveling spot on regular servers, and here it was no different. We picked up the pace, and by 10 PM, I had already reached level 199. Only one level to go. Easy enough, right? Wrong. The last level is infamous because it takes about 1/3 of the total experience required to reach max level in Dofus. Nonetheless, the run at the Bliblis had been so good that I was already 1/3 of the way there. At this point, we had basically been focusing for over 8 hours, which is mentally exhausting no matter the task. Despite that, we paid one last visit to the Carnotaurus Lair and kept grinding XP like our lives depended on it. And we were gladly surprised when an anomaly opened on that same dungeon at 10:30. I knew this was the moment to finish my run, so I gritted my teeth and pushed on. After 30 more minutes of farming, I finally reached level 200 on the first day of the competition with an hour to spare, landing on place 90 on the ladder. This was overall a pretty fun endeavor, although I have to admit that I sank too many hours preparing for this tournament. At least, I ended up cashing 375 euros, which are roughly about 430 bucks. Not bad for my first game tournament. Sadly, my brother ended his run on the evening of the second day, and while he secured an impressive top 194 spot, he didn't qualify for a part of the prize. Despite that, I really appreciated him participating with me on this tournament. I probably wouldn't have been able to place as high as I did without his help and strategies, so I decided to share half of my prize with him, because this was something we achieved together. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video I made about this little adventure. If you had fun, please consider checking my channel, since I want to make more videos like this about games I love. Take care!
Somewhere beyond